reading the message, you are analyzing, it does have certain meaning. And see, while you are listening to a statement, while you are listening to some sentences, at the same time you are interpreting and you are trying to derive some meaning out of it. And you have to reflect, you have to react on that meaning that you are receiving out of the statement. So that is something called reflecting implications. You have to understand the meaning and you have to react to that particular meaning. It can be a verbal reflection, or it can be even a non-verbal reflection. It depends on what kind of message the speaker and listener they are dealing with. But a reflecting implication is must. As a good listener, you have to react on it. You have to reflect upon the message that you are receiving. If we go ahead with some more characteristics of a good listener, then we can talk about reflecting hidden feelings, inviting further contributions, and responding non-verbally. When I'm saying reflecting hidden feelings, that means as a good listener, you have to control yourself and you have to analyze the message, as well as you have to take care of your speaker, right? And you have to react and reflect along with whatever hidden feelings are conveyed in the message given by the speaker. One more thing which is very important as a good listener is you need to take care of your speaker, and you have to motivate, you have to encourage your speaker to deliver his or her message in a better way. And as a good listener, it becomes your prime duty to invite him for further contribution, for more contribution in terms of message. And how you can do that? You can do that by responding verbally or non-verbally. See, all the time it is not necessary that you respond the message of the speaker verbally. You can also respond the message of your speaker non-verbally. And many a times it becomes more important that you respond non-verbally. Because see, every time if you are responding verbally, that means you are somewhere you are disturbing your speaker, right? And you are creating certain hurdles between you and your speaker. Instead of that, better you respond non-verbally. Meanwhile, the speaker is speaking, speaker is delivering his or her message, right? So while you are responding non-verbally, you can nod your head, you can give some gestures, you can give some upright posture, and you can show non-verbally that you are paying attention to the message of your speaker. So that is another way to respond to your speaker's message. Now, while we are talking about listening, we must be knowing the difference between active and passive listening. What is active and what is passive in terms of listening? For example, right now I'm there on your screen and you are paying attention to me. That is called active listening. But right now at the same time, there is something else going on in the foyer nearby the room where you are right now sitting. So that is called passive listening. You are paying attention to me, you are paying attention to the listening session that is going on your screen. That is your active listening. But at the same time, some other things are going on around, and unknowingly you are paying bit attention or you are not paying attention, and you are still getting those sounds. So that is called passive listening, right? Or else one more example, while you are taking your lunch and dinner and TV is on, and while you are watching television and you are taking your meals, that becomes again passive listening, right? Because your prime attention is maybe your family talk, maybe in lunch or dinner, and your passive attention is your television program that is going on. So that is the difference between active and passive listening. Now in active and passive listening, we must talk about three things, and that is show keenness, expressions, and alertness. When it's active listening, you have to show your keen interest into the message that you are listening to, along with your expressions. Your expressions here, as I said earlier, Again, here it could be verbal, or even it could be non-verbal expression. It could be even a facial expression. It could be even a gesture, right? Which indicates that you are paying attention to the message that what you are receiving. And the third thing is being alert. When it comes to active listening, you need to be alert to grasp each and every point of message that you are trying to receive. So these are the three things very important in active listening. Questions, not neglecting physical aspects, and valid reason for criticism. As an active listener, you should raise certain questions in your mind. Certain questions here, what I mean is, what you are listening, are you getting it properly? Have you understood the things what the speaker wants to convey? And at the same time, you should not neglect the physical aspects. As a listener, your physical aspect, and at the same time, physical aspects of your speaker. Because body speaks louder than the words, it is said. So while you are listening, you have to pay attention even to the body language of your speaker, and you have to control yourself in terms of your own body language. It should not distract your speaker. You should not move here and there while you are listening to somebody who is speaking in front of you. You should always maintain your eye contact with your speaker, so that, in that way, again, you can motivate, you can encourage your speaker. And the third thing is valid reason for criticism. And as an active listener, if you are moving ahead with a bit of criticism, then there must be valid reason for your criticism. And it should not be the criticism of the speaker. It can be the criticism of the message that you are receiving. But mind it very well, there must be some valid reason behind each and every criticism from your side. So friends, these are certain things that you need to keep in your mind to become a good listener. Let us move ahead with certain implications. Good listening helps you to take better decisions and make better policies in organization. As listening, in the very first slide, we discussed that listening is a management skill. Listening is a leadership skill too. So good listening always helps for creating a better environment in the institute, in an organization, at workplace. And listening always gives a very good response to your speaker, and even speaker gets encouraged. And especially at workplace, if you are good at listening, then you can maintain good relations with all your fellow workers. On the contrary, lack of proper listening can lead to embarrassing situations because of a gap in coordination and understanding. So, if you are not a good listener, if you are lacking something or lacking somewhere in your listening abilities, then it may create certain gap of understanding, gap of coordination, and that is called, in terms of communication, it is called semantic gap. And semantic means meaning. So gap of meaning, gap of understanding, it remains between the sender and the receiver if you are not a good listener. Speaker, suppose, is trying his or her best to deliver his or her message, but as a listener, you are not paying much attention. As a listener, you are not having proper habits in your listening, proper skill in your listening, then it may create certain gap of understanding, and there remains gap of coordination as well. And ultimately, it leads to the failure of the entire process of communication between you and your speaker, right? So lack of listening can be a bigger loss to the process of communication which takes place between sender and the receiver. Let us have a look on some tips for effective listening. And there are always certain do's and don'ts for effective listening. Let's have a look. First, let us talk about certain do's, and then we'll move ahead with certain don'ts, right? So while you are listening, for becoming a good listener, these are some do's that you need to take care of. The very first thing is be mentally prepared to listen. Evaluate the speech, not the speaker. See, when you are saying mentally prepared to listen, that means your mind must not be preoccupied somewhere else. Otherwise, it could be your physical presence, but not the psychological or not the mental presence over there when you are listening to somebody. So, mentally be prepared. That means your presence of mind is required, your mental presence is required, and you have to pay attention to the speaker, to the message. And never evaluate the speaker. Always evaluate the speech of the speaker. So while you are listening, you have to focus on the content part. You have to focus on the message part. Obviously, you have to pay bit attention to how the message is being conveyed, but never try to evaluate your speaker, right? Put faith in your speaker and just try to evaluate speech of your speaker. Be unbiased to the speaker by depersonalizing your feelings. Fight distractions by closing off sound sources. See, be unbiased to the speaker by depersonalizing your feelings. That means, for example, Mr. X is not good. If this is my bias, then whenever I'm going to listen to Mr. X, I do have certain biases in my mind. And it creates certain hurdles between me and Mr. X. And probably for that, whatever Mr. X is saying, maybe I'm not paying much attention to that, or maybe whatever he is saying, I'm not taking that much interest into that. And due to that, there remains the message unconveyed from Mr. X's side. Whatever the message that he is trying to deliver probably would not reach fully, completely, successfully to me. Why? Because I'm having certain biases in my mind for Mr. X. So always try to be unbiased for your speaker and pay attention. Fight distractions by closing off sound sources. See, distractions, hurdles, obstacles. If in surrounding area there are some other sound sources, maybe some noise or some other things are there, then you should always try to focus on the main content, or we can say the message that you desire to listen to. So you have to be ready to fight against all other distractions, all other surrounding noise, surrounding sound sources and things like this. Be open-minded. Ask questions to clarify and not to overshadow intelligence. See, always be open-minded while you are listening to something. Don't keep your mindset set in certain boundaries. Always be open and try to listen at your best. In case you have some queries in your mind, you should ask your queries, you should ask your questions to the speaker to clarify the message, to have some more clarification on message, and not to overshadow your intelligence to the speaker. Many a times we observe that when the speaker is speaking, listeners are just trying to, go for leg pulling or certain things like this. So never try to overshadow, never try to show your intelligence in that way. Instead of that, better you pay attention to the message part, content part, and in that case, if you do have some queries, ask questions for more clarifications to make the message, to make the process of entire communication better and more clear. Paraphrase from time to time. As I said earlier, paraphrase, that means to verify, to check it out, whether what you are listening, what you are getting, what you are understanding, is it the exactly same what the speaker wants to convey. So, time to time, when you are listening to your speaker, you have to paraphrase, you have to verify that what he is saying, what you are getting, is it the same? Does it have a good match? So, paraphrase from time to time. Send appropriate non-verbal signals time to time. Again, here, non-verbal signals are required at proper timings. While your speaker is speaking, when you need to nod your head, or when you need to give a gesture, or maybe a sign of certain things like you are understanding, you are getting the message of your speaker, what he is saying, what he is delivering. You can also indicate these things through your non-verbal gestures, through your facial expressions, right? And many times it happens that while we are listening to our speaker, when we understand it, we show it through our face expression. And even when we are not getting certain things, it makes certain expression over here on our forehead, and speaker may understand that you are not getting the things properly. So that is how you can respond non-verbally to your speaker. But your reaction, your response, your feedback as a listener is always required for better communication between you and your speaker. Through that, your speaker can have certain ideas that whether you are getting the things or not, and it makes the further communication better. Now let us talk about certain don'ts on effective listening. Don't do this if you want to go for effective listening, if you want to become a good listener. So let us have a look. What are the things? Not to pay undue emphasis on vocabulary, as you can use the context to understand the meaning. See, as we know that context does help to derive meaning out of sentences, out of content. So don't pay much attention to vocabulary. Don't give more emphasis on vocabulary part, and better you try to understand the meaning from the context. For example, if I say, Mr. X strangulated Pingula wearingly. I repeat, Mr. X strangulated Pangula wearingly. What is the meaning of this? My dear friends, there are no words like strangulated,